Alright everybody, so here we are. We've hit the last theatrical release Star Wars movie that I have yet to talk about. The very last one. I'm not talking about the Clone Wars. Solo: A Star Wars Story was released in 2017, directed by Ron Howard, and stars Alden Ehrenreich, Emilia Clarke, Donald Glover, Woody Harrelson, Paul Bettany, and Jonas Suotama is Chewbacca. It follows the story of a young Han Solo and explores his life and journey before we see him as the smuggler we all know and love in the original Star Wars movie. Before we get started talking about Solo: A Star Wars Story, I want to make sure that you guys get your say in down in the comment section below. So make sure that you tell me all your thoughts and opinions about what you guys think of Solo: A Star Wars Story, and be sure to add your voice to this conversation. And with all that out of the way, let's start talking about Solo: A Star Wars Story. So right off the bat, I think it's important to go into a little bit of the history of Solo: A Star Wars Story before we actually start talking about the movie itself. No one wanted this movie. When it was announced, no one was really excited for a Han Solo prequel. It didn't really seem necessary. Harrison Ford wasn't really all that old as his character in the original Star Wars movie, and they gave his character a pretty good arc of how he became a heroic figure within that movie alone. There really wasn't any need in a lot of people's eyes, including my own, as to why we needed this Star Wars story following Han Solo when he was like a kid or a teenager. But Lucasfilm decided to do Han Solo as their second entry into their anthology, A Star Wars Story series. And the movie didn't do all that well. Besides having major behind-the-scenes issues, originally the directors of Solo: A Star Wars Story was going to be the directing duo of Lord and Miller, the directors behind the Lego Movie. But as filming went on and they started to steer away from the original script and started going down a more comedic route for the movie, they were fired pretty well into the production stage of filming the movie. So in desperate attempt to finish the movie, Lucasfilm hired Ron Howard to shoot the rest of the movie as well as do some reshoots to finish Solo: A Star Wars Story and eventually get it into theaters for the unfortunate Star Wars bomb that it ended up being. Solo: A Star Wars Story was the first Star Wars movie to actually lose money, which is pretty crazy to think about. This movie did not do very well in the theaters, and really went on to further cement how much people were not asking for this movie. So with all the history of the problems of this movie out of the way, let's start talking about the product that we actually got, starting with Alden Ehrenreich. So Alden Ehrenreich plays young Han Solo in this film, and honestly, all the problems I have with Han Solo in this movie are none of Alden Ehrenreich's problem. Alden Ehrenreich, as his Han Solo, actually at times really captures the mannerisms and speech patterns that Harrison Ford had as the character of Han Solo, while not feeling like an impression and actually feeling pretty authentic to the character. There are times where his facial expressions really match Harrison Ford's, and you can really kind of see and envision that this is Han Solo. But what the movie does do is add a lot of unnecessary background to Han Solo, the character. Han Solo was not really someone you needed all the answers to. He was a smuggler, a lone ranger in a lot of ways, who only trusted his partner Chewbacca as his co-pilot and his partner in crime, until he meets up with Luke and Obi-Wan and they go on this adventure together and he learns to be part of a dynamic and have friendships. That was kind of his character arc in a way in the first Star Wars movie. Solo: A Star Wars Story just adds too much unnecessary background to the character of Han Solo. We did need to know how he got his name, especially this way.
Who are your people?
I don't have people. I'm alone.
Solo.
That was the moment in the movie theater where I felt this movie starting to lose me. Seriously, his name just couldn't be Han Solo. It had to be some stupid given name by an Imperial officer in a really goofy comedic tone.
Solo.
And honestly, I find it kind of weird that in this movie, Han Solo has a girlfriend that he's really committed to. I've always saw Han Solo in the original Star Wars movie as that lone ranger smuggler guy who didn't trust anybody and maybe slept around but didn't really have a serious committed relationship until he met Princess Leia, and Princess Leia was kind of the first woman to capture Han Solo's heart. To see him almost have a high school sweetheart in this movie is a little weird for me to kind of comprehend, and isn't something that I ever thought Han Solo would have in his previous life. And I think that's one of the big reasons why many people didn't want Solo: A Star Wars Story and why so many people didn't really go out to see it, based on the box office numbers compared to previous Star Wars movies, is because everyone has their own kind of vision of what they picture Han Solo to be. And this movie, once you see it, makes you abandon those visions and theories and mysteries that you had about the character and explains them all to you. And in a way, makes you kind of have to accept them. It takes away that mystery and that imagination part that I'm able to have with the character. And a lot of stuff that they display for me and make up for me, I'm just not on board with. And that's one of the reasons why I really don't enjoy Solo: A Star Wars Story. That's not to say that everything that they introduce into Han Solo's background is all that bad. I do kind of enjoy seeing him meet up with Chewie, Although it is kind of horrific to think that Chewie has eaten people.
Feed him to the beast.
Having him meet Lando was pretty cool, and seeing the card game that actually ensued for him to win the Millennium Falcon, as well as seeing the Millennium Falcon as it's brand new and in Lando's position, how different it is and clean and stylized it is as opposed to when we see it kind of all dusty and ratty in the original Star Wars movie. But for every pro that we see to Han Solo's background in this movie, there's a negative. We get to see him meet Chewie, but he speaks Wookiee. I don't know, I just find that kind of strange. And then he never ever does it again. We get to see him meet Lando. We get to find out how he got his name.
Solo.
We get to witness him winning the Falcon. We get the Kessel Run. Can I just talk about the Kessel Run for a second? The Kessel Run in this movie is so disappointing. Han Solo holds the Kessel Run to like this legendary standard of something that he's done, and he's surprised no one knows about it.
If it's a fast ship,
Fast ship. You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
should I have?
It's a ship that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs.
I've always envisioned the Kessel Run as kind of like the pod race scene in Phantom Menace, this insane galaxy race, or maybe even like a getaway chase that Han Solo was in as a smuggler as he's being chased by the Imperial starships. And he was able to outrun them in this crazy galactic route within the star system. But in this movie, the Kessel Run is this really gray and dull looking atmospheric place with a big giant squid monster in the middle of it that Han Solo's able to escape by dumping some hyperfuel into his Falcon to give it an extra boost into light speed. You don't even realize that's the Kessel Run until Han Solo himself nudges someone on the shoulder and just casually says,
"Just did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs."
I remember seeing that in theaters and being like, really? That was the Kessel Run? Like, it didn't even stand out in the movie. And it's something that Han Solo holds so high in regards to his character. Once I actually saw it in this movie, I was really disappointed. I was like, how would anyone know about that? It was like no one was even there and it wasn't even that memorable. That's my Kessel Run tangent on this movie, but I just gotta say this movie really dropped the ball on the Kessel Run for me. Okay, so I've talked about Alden Ehrenreich, Han Solo, long enough. I don't mind his portrayal as the character, I just don't like what the movie does with the character. Let's talk about the other people in this movie. Emilia Clarke as the girlfriend does fine. Donald Glover as Lando is kind of the standout of the movie. He has the suave kind of charm that Billy D. Williams had in the original Empire Strikes Back when we first see Lando. He's able to kind of make the character his own while not feeling like an impression, kind of similar to Alden Ehrenreich. So I like seeing Donald Glover as Lando in this movie. Woody Harrelson as the guide to Han Solo's introduction into the smuggler world, I think he does okay. He's not really that memorable of a character for me. And Paul Bettany as the villain in this movie, when you get to see him, he's not in it very much. He does a fine job, but again, not very memorable as a villain in my opinion. The best character this movie kind of does justice for, in my opinion, is Chewbacca. Chewbacca gets a lot of good shine, and he actually gets some pretty good character moments within this movie. We get to see that he was a slave of the Imperial Empire, and that's how he met Han Solo, and Han Solo helped set him free. We get to see a little bit more with Chewbacca and his family. We get to learn how old he is.
190 years old?
We get to see Chewbacca get in on the action a little bit more. Well, we sort of get to see it. I'll get to that in a sec. And for me, this movie kind of goes from Chewbacca feeling kind of more of like Han Solo's pet or sidekick to feeling more of being his own character and individual person, which I kind of like that this movie does that for Chewbacca. But I gotta say, watching this movie back again, it's a very boring and dull experience. I don't know if this relates to Lord and Miller being fired and Ron Howard coming in to finish the movie and doing research, but this movie from start to finish is basically gray and colorless, and the lighting is really dim for the entire running time of the movie. I don't know if that was just cheaper to do during reshoots and to finish the movie at the budget that they were given, but I gotta say, when I watched this movie, it really stood out to me. Every single planet and place that they went to just looked the same, gray, dull, washed out, colorless, lifeless, and the lighting was really dark. It was hard to see the faces sometimes. I mean, I really did not enjoy looking at this movie. This is easily the ugliest looking Star Wars movie out of all the ones that have been released so far. And that kind of look that they give this movie really makes this movie feel more like a fan film to me. The production of this movie is actually pretty cool. Things look Star Wars-y. The action in this movie is pretty decent. We get a pretty cool train heist scene early on in the film. We get a pretty decent chase scene that goes on with Han Solo and some Imperials early on the planet of Corellia. But this is the only live-action Star Wars movie that I don't own, and it really doesn't feel canon to me. It feels like a fan film to me. Someone made this who was a fan of Star Wars that had this idea for Han Solo. It's nice to see their interpretation of Han Solo. It's just not my interpretation of Han Solo. And for that reason, I've never really enjoyed this movie. I've never really felt like watching this movie again. And now that I have watched it again, I really don't feel like putting it back on. I think the enjoyment of this movie is really going to come down to how much you think of Han Solo. If you're just a casual Star Wars watcher and you don't really care that much about thinking about the characters and have this vision of their background, and you just want to see a fun Star Wars kind of adventure within this galaxy, this movie is fine. I can't say it's good, I can't say it's bad, it's just kind of in the middle, it's okay. I can't say that I hate this movie, I just don't enjoy it. And I think that's really what this movie comes down to, is your enjoyment of the Han Solo character. And I've had this idea of Han Solo built in my head and the way that I've looked at his character for the past 15 years. And when this movie comes along and says, hey, this is what Han Solo really was when he was younger, and this is how he got to be the way that he is, and I don't agree with it because I like the way I had it better, then I admit that I'm pretty stubborn on this movie, and the whole reason why I don't like this movie isn't really the movie's fault. It's more so my own problem. It's competently made. It's got some decent action. The actors are doing a fine job within the movie. It's got the Star Wars feel. It's got some cool moments. It looks pretty good production-wise. It's just not a Star Wars movie that gets me excited, and it doesn't feel like I'm visiting the Star Wars universe. It feels like I'm visiting someone's interpretation and idea of the Star Wars universe. It just doesn't align with my idea and what I like to see within the Star Wars universe. Anyway, guys, those are all my thoughts, opinions, ideas. That's me analyzing Solo, a Star Wars story, really. That's just my problems with the movie. But you know what? Like I admitted, I'm pretty stubborn on the movie. What did you guys think of the movie? Do you guys care about the things that I brought up? Or are you just like, nah, this was a fun Star Wars adventure in the galaxy far, far away? Couldn't blame you if that's how you feel. But if that's how you feel, comment down below. Let me know. I want to know all your thoughts and opinions about Solo, a Star Wars story. And guys, that does it for all the live-action Star Wars movies that I have to talk about. Again, not covering the Clone Wars. Star Wars is a pretty interesting franchise. I don't even love all the movies within the whole franchise, but I still enjoy Star Wars. I still say I love Star Wars. I can't deny that there's nothing really out there like Star Wars, even still to this day. Every single movie has something cool and interesting within it. Even though I may not love these movies individually, I love this galaxy and world that George Lucas has built and other people have helped build upon. And be it good or bad, I still love Star Wars, and I can't wait to see what else the Star Wars universe has to offer within the future. As always, guys, thank you so much for clicking on this video and checking out my channel and talking all these Star Wars movies with me. If you want to hear my thoughts on the rest of the Star Wars live-action theatrical release movies, I have a playlist on my channel that you can check out. And until next time, my name's Zachary Milne. Thank you for talking movies with me, and hope you have yourself a great day.